Good, Mr. Robert. Can you see my screen? If you can't type, just if you can't speak, just send a message in the chat box so you know you are following. Okay, so a quick recap into last week's class. So we had two sessions last week. One of them was intro into what UI/UX is, design thinking, then research. Then we talked about brainstorming. Then we did a few things on brainstorming. So we already know that UI/UX is essentially a user interface and user experience, and it's our job to design the interface. Okay, Victor, could you mute yourself, please? I'm getting a feedback from your end.
Well, I can hear you.
I'm getting a feedback from your end. Okay, so like I was saying, user interface, user experience. So essentially, we are designing for the interface where the portion of the design that our users interact with. Then we're trying to craft out a suitable, smooth experience for them, so they don't have that um, distrust or distaste for what we are designing. So we move on to what we call design thinking. Design thinking is basically an iterative process, a step-by-step but back and forth process where we try to solve a problem. In there are like five different steps of design thinking now. Wow. So one of them is empathy. So empathy is putting ourselves in the user's shoes. So we're seeing the products and solutions from the perspective of our users. So we tend to design for them because give or take, most products that we see out there, whilst they are designed by designers, they're not all used by designers. So the target audience now we need to empathize with them, their needs, their wants, their frustrations, and the likes. Then we have things like brainstorming, which we did yesterday. So brainstorming is basically coming up with ideas. So the beauty of brainstorming now is that no idea is too vague. But as we go on, we will tend to sieve out the most reasonable ones and the ones that are not so reasonable. So that's brainstorming now, coming up with ideas. So if you are in a team of designers, developers, product managers, product owners, and the like. So the best thing to do now is brainstorm. There is this brainstorming technique which is called Crazy Eight. So what happens is we are given like 8 minutes to talk, 8 minutes to come up with an idea, no matter how crazy it is. So once the time is has elapsed, we basically just bring out all our ideas, then sieve them. Which one is more feasible? Which one is more attainable? Essentially. Now there's the next part of the design thinking now is things like prototyping. So prototyping is basically we are trying to simulate the design as best it will be in real life. So we have designed our entire interface. Now, what do we do next? We basically prototype, essentially. So is there basically different parts of the design thinking process, but the goal of it all is to solve a problem. There is no clear-cut path. There is not a straight linear path. It's basically an iterative process. It's back and forth, back and forth. So you can start from anywhere. You could test a product before you actually empathize with the users and then go on from there. Next, we talked about product and user research. So the goal of product and user research, because research is anything that we do that will influence our decision making in our design process. So if I study 2 to 3 users of an application or like WhatsApp, for example, and I figure out a thing or two that they don't really like, and that thing I figured out influences my decision. Essentially, what I did was a research. Yes. So user research is really important. User research, product research. The goal of this is that since we already established that we are not designing for ourselves, yes, we are designing for our users. It's best to study our users, so what they are, see what their needs are, what their frustrations are, how best we can solve their problems. Now, there are two things: needs, wants, frustrations. So the users now, while it's not good to ask our users, what do you want? What do you want? The thing is, not all users know what they really want or what they really need. There are two different things. So I may need an application that help me to keep track of time, for example. Now, what I want may be something that helps me contact somebody, like somebody that will tell me time. So the wants and the needs are two different things entirely. So user research now tends to allow the designers to get a feel of what the users need. Then frustrations now basically research basically seals out and brings out those things that they are frustrated about, and we tailor our decision into meeting those frustrations and needs essentially. Then day two, we talked about brainstorming. So what we basically did was different ideas were brought. So we basically did a small analysis of the competitors, of the users, demography of the users, and stuff like that. So that's brainstorming in the most basic form of it. So as we go along in this boot camp, we get to have other ideas and stuff like that. So last week now we came to a consensus that we are going to work on one particular product. So I will leave the floor to whoever is in charge to basically give us a brief. What have you guys discussed so far? What products are you working on? What is the idea? And what have you guys done so far? So who is speaking to us? Inumidun, Joy, Daniel, Sean, who is speaking to us, please? Hello. I was not on the group chat, so I don't know. Okay, I was not pay attention to the group chat, so I don't know how much you guys have progressed. So I want like a minute or two of a progress report. What are you guys working on? How many guys are working on it? What have you guys come up with essentially? Do you guys do the analysis of competitors now? What How many products are like what you guys are working on? Pain points? What are their basically things like that? Is there anything yet? That was last week Sunday. So what's your update?
Good evening, everybody. Okay,
Good evening, Daniel.
we actually just listed out the products. I think we listed out most of the products. I don't think we listed.
So if I get this straight, you listed out just the product that's working on. Daniel, are you there? Nobody's talking again. So the thing is, the plan was for you guys to basically pick an idea, then develop the idea, look at other competitors. What do they have? What features do they have that you guys can work on? What are they lacking that you guys can develop or implement? Yeah, so writing all your ideas down on paper was the plan for the week. So is there a brief you can show us? Joy, Midun, Victor, Jola is in us. What's the update?
I'm sorry, I'm kind of distracted. I'm on the road, so I didn't even hear the
Oh,
question.
okay.
I was just hearing my name.
Uh, can you hear me?
Yeah,
If you
I can
are on
hear
the
you.
if you are on the road, if you're on the road, I think if someone else should just take over. I was just asking what the update is as about the assignment. You guys were to work on one particular product and develop the brief for that product. So Let's just share the brief for us to see and discuss on what you have worked on so far. That was just what I was asking.
I don't think everybody dropped their own idea. I think it was just three people in total that dropped their ideas. So, and that was the end. We didn't
So you
really
guys didn't
talk about
decide
it
on a
or
product to work
brainstorm.
on.
No, not even decided on product to work on.
So first thing first, I believe that for effectiveness, we first need to assign a group leader. Then the group leader will now have different milestones to work with. So um, just pick a leader amongst yourself first. Then maybe tonight or tomorrow for tomorrow's class, let's develop a brief for any idea. So you guys mustn't drop all your ideas, but just pick one idea at least. You have like more than 15 ideas already. Just pick one idea. So let's move on to what we have for today. So let me quickly share my screen. Hold on 1 second while I try to present. If you can see it, just let me know. Okay, it's coming up. Okay, so for this week, we'll basically be talking about visual design and its principles. So this visual is um, colors, text, typography, stuff like that. Yes, it's not haphazard. So there are a lot of principles that we need to understand before we can actually design like things are appealing at least. So the principles of the design is also looking at for today. So basically, there is no particular definition or principle of what this is, but essentially, principle of design is like guidelines. So there are a lot of them. Some books will say there are five, some will say there are six, some will say 12. There are a lot of them. So, but there are some core ones that we need to know, we should look at today. So, some of the principles of design now include things like contrast. You may have observed um, different play of colors around you. So, if there is a sharp distinction between different layers of color, you say that that has a good contrast. Like this now, this white text on a black background, it has a good contrast. So in cases where I have a black text and I have like a shade of black as the text, the background is black, then a shade of black is also the text. That will be a very, very poor contrast because they will have like absolutely either no visibility or reduced visibility. So now, as designers, now it should always be at the back of our mind that it's our job to make our users have a stress-free time while using our product. So if there is reduced visibility, basically is bad UI or and basically bad UX. So we need because remember I was talking about principles of UX, for example, last week, and one of the principles include equitability. So whilst I have sharp eyes, another user may not have as sharp eyes as I do. So to avoid this, we will need to have contrast that is really, really clear and clean and clear cut. So having contrast that is clear, distinct is a compulsory part of design. So contrast makes elements pop out. You hear people say, okay, design needs to pop, basically. The goal of this is that it can grab the attention of our users with relative ease. So you don't have to strain their eyes, so you don't have to um, increase the visibility of their screens or do other things that would make them want to see the design or see the action well. So next slide. So now, when we talk about the best practices for contrast, now what do we mean? What are we trying to achieve? So the thing is, it's we are trying to play with colors here. Yes. So the to be on the safe side, to make sure that our designs are not all over the place with stable and consistent contrast. We advise that we use as few colors as possible. Not too many colors, not too many bold colors, not too many extravagant colors. Simple colors and few colors. We want to have like a rainbow in our mobile application. If you notice, some applications now like WhatsApp, Instagram, and the likes, they have really, really few colors. Like Facebook now, the predominant colors are just white and blue. WhatsApp, it's just green and white. Twitter is just blue and white as well. Instagram is like pink and a shade of like a gradient of pink, then white as well. So not having too many colors will go a long way into having the best contrast, catching the attention of our users. Then next thing is we will need to master color usage. Now, color now is there's a psychology to color. Most persons what I'm laughing because of the fact that most persons tend to want to override or um, over what's the English? Overblow color psychology. Now, someone said this thing one time. Um, Green is for agriculture, green is for nature and the likes. Then he said, Spotify is green. And they're selling beans, that kind of thing. So while color psychology is important, the goal is to understand how it can be used, how well we can use whatever color we're using. If it's green, if it's red, you can still study up now. Red now simplifies danger and the likes, but it's our logo here. It's red. There's nothing dangerous about study hub. Yeah, so the goal is to master the usage of color, no matter the kind of color it is. It can be red, it can be black, it can be pink. Solid colors, gradients, and the likes. Then next thing is for contrast. Now, it's not just about the color. Sometimes it's good to use colors for hierarchy's sake, but other times to have a better contrast is used to just use same colors for different text sizes. How do I mean? I am trying to have a distinction between a header and a body text. So some persons will now say, okay, the header should be pink red color. Others will say the header should just be a bolder text, then a subtext that is the same color but a smaller text. So that has a better contrast as opposed to having colors. Because like I said the first time, having too many colors can have an effect in the design overall. So being on the safe side now, it's advised to just play it cool, play it simple, two, three colors, four if you are good with colors. Having a balance because too many colors can spoil the entire design and stuff like that. And the next is proportion. So when we say proportion now, what we mean is like the sizes of elements. So not all elements now, bar should be massive and big. The point is, we want to pass an idea to our users. Yes. So, how best can we do this? That's just the point. So, proportion now, it's like emphasizing what's more important. If it's bigger, it's have proportion as opposed to the others. If it's bigger, it means that okay, this is more important, this is more emphasized. So the principle of design here now, proportion says now that the elements in relation to one another, like it signals what's more important in design and what it's not. So this page, you see proportion and you see the definition behind or below it. Proportion is the header text. Yes, it's bigger, it's bolder, it's more emphasized. Get now the smaller text now is just a supporting text, but the main thing is proportion. like the heading proportion. So the goal of proportional is to make sure that there's a distinction between what's important and what's not important. Moving on, we have proximity. I would maybe tomorrow we'll talk about the laws of UX. Like there are different laws of UX now, about, and one of them is proximity. So the idea is elements that are closer together are like grouped together. So let's assume now I am trying to create like an ID card. Yes, there's a photo already, then there's a name, and then there is a short bio. So the name and the short bio are together. Now it can be assumed now that the name and the bio are together. Now let's assume now that we have a name and the bio is a long way off. John Cross, can you please mute yourself? Okay, so let's assume now that the name is there, bio is a lot, is farther down. So anyone will just believe that okay, they are not connected, so they don't tell us the same thing or they're not related. So proximity now tends to want to tell us that the elements that are close together are like groups together, they mean the same thing, essentially. Who else can hear me, please? Is it just Don Cross?
I can hear you.
You can hear me well, yeah? Okay. So, John, I think it's from your end, maybe network or something, because I can hear everybody else and I can be heard. So, hold on, please. Okay. So the next principle of design is white space. Most persons call it negative spacing. So what this means is basically the part of the design that is that doesn't have anything inside, like it's just blank. Okay. So the goal of having white space is so the design can appear neater and more organized. So having space that is jam packed doesn't really tell well for your design, but having designs that have lots of white spaces, negative spaces, or spaces that allow the design room to breathe, is really important. So if you have designs that don't have enough white space, it's advised to just space your elements out because space is very important. Like it's one of the most important elements of design or principle of design. So having white spaces that's basically allow your design to breathe, allow your elements to breathe is it will go a very very long way in making your design stand out, look more mature and more organized. So that's basically the basic principles of design that we're going to talk about today. Tomorrow we'll go into something else. But the other part of our session for today is basically looking at things like style guide, typography, and components. So, how many of you have opened Figma since this week or last week? If you've been able to access Figma, a show of hands. Let's know if you have. Okay, Victor, you could unmute yourself. Let's see what you've been able to do. Okay, crypto stuff as well. Please, you can talk. Let's just interact for a bit.
I'm not using my computer right now, so I'm using
No,
my
it's
phone.
fine.
I'm
It's
far
fine.
from the computer.
It's fine. So, how was the interface like? What did you do with the design that you tried to do or something?
So I tried typing some text and creating some shapes.
Mhm.
Yeah, something like that, and it's very very interesting. Or what will I say? Actually, I'm a graphic designer, and
Okay.
I would say Figma is very, very interesting. The tools, how to use them is fascinating. I'm sure once I start using Figma very well, I'm going to lose interest in Photoshop and CorelDRAW to an extent.
Okay. So what about crypto stuff? Did you do anything in Figma?
Okay, as for me, I'm not a graphic designer, short I'm new to all of this stuff. So I was just trying to, understand the interface, like the different tools that are there and what you taught us on that community place there. So I was trying to like see the different works that those people are doing there and try to see if I can replicate anything if at all. That's what I just try to do.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Anybody else? Sean Joy. Jola is here, yes. Jola Middle. Were you able to go to Figma and do anything at all?
Yes, I was able to check through Figma,
Okay.
the layers and the community also. I've been able to go through it. But I think I've been checking more of the community to see what people have been able to create. So it's fascinating knowing that you can use this platform to create a lot of things. But I think I also like this component thing, and I've been trying to find a way around it, how to link things together. But I'm sure when we get to that part of the class, maybe it will be more. I will get more insight into that part of it.
Okay. So what we'll be doing now, as I share my screen, is basically looking at style guides and components, then typography and color. So there's a concept called design system, and in design system now, a part of design system is known as style guide. So style guide basically contains things like our typography, things like our color, things like our components, what else again, buttons, things like that. So let me share my screen again so we enter the interface for Figma. But before I proceed, if there are any questions as regards the principles of design or Figma now, please share. Let's tackle that one first before we move on. Okay, Victor, please ask.
So I didn't quite get proximity when you explained it earlier. I didn't get it very well.
Okay, so proximity, what it does is that it's just a law of UX that elements that are closer together appear to be together than elements that are far apart. So let me look for. Okay, I can't find anyone now. Um, but the point is, let me see if I can find anything. Hold on for a second. So if two elements are together now, so the closer they, the more likely they are to be seen by users to be together. Let me go to Google. And pull up an image that will explain this better for us to see. So if you look at this now, this box here, you see, let me download the image, then take to a Figma file so you can see it later. Can you all see it? So we have two stacks of elements here, like explaining proximity. So the first one here, first off, talking about white spacing, there is very small white spacing or negative spacing here. So it's already perceived by the users that all these things are jam-packed, they are together. Product name, this one, they're all together. So looking at this now, it's not visually appealing at all in the sense of white spacing because they are just too clustered. So I can't tell what is what. Get now from perspective of proximity now, I would just assume that this entire thing, this entire card is just one card exactly. But looking at this other one here by the right, you see that it has more negative spacing, there's more white space. So this is one element now, one element, one element, one element, one element. These ones are together. This hash, this product name, this description, this binary basket. I can see it as one particular um, entity or element. Same thing with this one, same thing with this one, same thing with this one. So negative spacing as is well spaced out. Proximity, we can tell what is what and what's what stand for. I don't know if that answers the question, Victor.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Any other question? Okay, if there are no other questions, let's tackle style guides now. So what are style guides now? Style guides are basically um, so I don't know if I explained this last week, but style guides it basically is a an important part of design. Before we start designing any products, be it websites or application, having a style guide basically it helps us know that okay, this element should be here, here, and here. So there is a form of unity or unity, like basically uniformity across board. So going a step further now, there's what we call design system. So a design system is like a style guide in quotes, style guide. What it does is that if you have a design system, you can basically make this across board for any design in that particular platform. So now, if I have, okay, one second, let me just do something real quick. Look at the component button. Say frame here. Let's say StudiHUB. Sign up. I'll show you these things later. What I'm trying to do. So let's just add a let's add color here. Um, so this is what we call auto layout. So auto layout is like it basically helps us to arrange our elements with relative ease. Now, this particular part is for alignment and padding. Padding is like the space from the border. So if you see here, if you notice here properly now, if I say here to be 20, here there will be a shift. Okay, this is 120. If I say here to be 20, you see it moves downwards. If I say left should be 20 as well, it moves to the left, like towards the right. If I say this right should be 20, it's moved towards the right. If I say this bottom should be 20 as well, you get. So this auto layout tells it helps us to arrange our elements. But let's do this now. I want to create a button, I want to create a component button, then a design system in quotes. So we have this. Okay. Let's make it more button like let's say 24 border radius. That's too much. Say 16. So let's just add more color. Let's make here white. And let's make here black. Now let's change the color here to a more button-like feel. Let's say green. Let's do this. Let's just do this. Okay. So components now, what the help us does is that it creates a sort of relationship between elements that are in a component. So there are parent components and then there are daughter components. So a parent component now is the one that takes the changes and costs the changes across board. What do I mean? Okay, this symbol here on top is components. So if I click on components now, this is now a component. Yes. Hold on, system is slow. I'm sorry. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry about that break. So this is our parent components now. Let's call it button. Let's name. It's important that we name our frames because the developers that work with us for to ease their jobs, it's you can't just have things be named frame 19762. Name if it's a button, name it a button. If it's a card, name it a card. So let's name this one button now. So this is our parent component. So if we duplicate these components now, say Control G. So you notice the two, this one and this one, they carry different logos or symbols. This one is like a diamond, this is just like a normal rectangle. So this diamond one now is the parent component, and this other one is just the daughter component. So let's create like five different daughter components now, and let's try something. So we have this parent components and other daughter components now. So let me try and change the color for parent components, and you see what happens. It says so the job of components now is basically to in events where we make a mistake with our logos or with our typeface or with our colors and we have finished our design, yes, it will be a lot easier if they were all in components. So we can effect our changes across board without going to each screen to change it, change it, change it, change. So the goal of components now to make our work easier that when we are trying to design, if there are events of changes, you can make the changes relatively quickly. Now, a broader use of this is in design systems. So once we have created our components for our buttons, our typefaces, our input fields, they'll all be in components. So if we effect a change in any part of it, it will reflect across board. That's what a component is. Now, what is the style guide? The style guide basically is a guide to that shows us what colors we are using, what shadows we are using, what card sizes we are using, what button colors and button sizes we are using. So I'll quickly just pull up one just now from the community. So we see. So before you start designing any kind of product at all, it's important that you first establish what the style guide is. So you should know beforehand that okay, this is what I want to try and do. But um, how would the button be like? How would the size be like? Stuff like that. So it's important that we know them beforehand before we start designing. Not so that we don't. It even saves our time. It saves efforts basically. So we don't pull um, random typefaces. Don't pull random sizes. Don't pull random colors from nowhere. Now, style guides include things like our brand guides. Now, I think it's like the brand, like Google. They have the colors that they're using. They have the typeface that are using, the feel and look that are using. So it's quickly include things like that. So let's quickly pull up one so we see what a style guide looks like. So this is from the once it loads, you will see what a style guide. Okay, you can see this now. So this is like a UI style guide, a simple UI style guide, and let me show you in detail. Okay, trying to zoom in now. Okay, so this now bar basically a style guide contains things like our color, things like our typography, iconography, grid system, spacing, text fields, selector, buttons, small elements, and like. So colors now, you know what colors are already. Colors are sorry about okay. So like I was saying, it contains colors. You know what the colors are. Colors can be like the major color of the brand. Let's say it's green for example now that's the brand color. You can have colors that include things like error fields can be green as well. Can be red, can be red. You can have things like success fields which can be green, things like that. So anything color is housed in color section. Now typography now include things like the header typography, the typeface, the font size, the font style, then the font size. You get so typeface and fonts are not the same. So when we say typeface now, I mean things like um, Times New Roman, things like Lato. But when we say things like fonts, basically means things like italic, bold, black. You get so when we hear people say, change the font to, what they mean is change the typeface really. So typeface fonts are not the same. Then next is iconography. They are icons. Both applications have icons. If you enter Instagram, for example, you see things like the settings, the profile, stuff like that. So to have a consistent feel across board is preferred that you just have like an icon pack that houses all your icons that you want to work with. Now, grid systems, what does grid systems entail? Is basically grids, lines that helps you attenuate what is what. Like, um, sorry about that. Sorry about 1 second, please. Sorry about that. Sorry. Okay, so the grid system, basically, I'll show you these things as we go on. Next is the spacing. So remember we talked about white space now, yes? So ad- it's advised to use 8 pixels as our white spacing, like as our spacing convention. So if you're using 8 pixels, if it's 8, it's 8, 16, 24, and the likes. If it's 4, it's 4, 8, 12, and the likes. If it's 10, it's 10, 20, 30, and stuff. Yes. Next is text field. So let me just quickly just show you what I mean. So this is our brand color. Uh, see, this is our brand color. It includes now if it's a primary color or a secondary color, and then the hex code for each sake. So usually I will add these things for developer's sake, so they'll know what to do per time. So this is the major color. This is the hex code. Now this is the primary color. Secondary color is this. And then the state color, what does it mean? Remember I mentioned things like success fields, error fields, and the like. So success is usually green, error is usually red, warning is yellow, info is blue. But it depends on what you're trying to work with, what you're trying to do. So it depends on you really. The next is okay, you can have things like text color, background color, and the likes. Depends on you too, really. Now, so there is no particular way you organize your style guide. So this is just like a template you can follow. Either you can choose it or not choose it, but the goal is to have a consistency with your styles. So this is our typography. Now you see this now. This is font size. This is our typeface. Typeface here is Inter. Yeah, this is Inter as a typeface now. The font is it depends. So we can have font size to be 56, 48. It depends on you. Usually there is a calculator, but not not everybody know how to use calculators. So is the goal is to just have a consistent ordering or numbering. For instance, 16 can be 16, 24, 32, and the like. So as you go along, as you get better at designing, you know what to do per time. You cannot use 56 for header one and use 56 for body text as well. So it doesn't really follow. So having a consistent feel at first board is the most important thing really. What do we have next? We have things like okay, things like iconography now. So like I said before, it's advised that you use an icon set. So if you are not into icon design, you can just go and download an icon set. But as long as it contains what you want to achieve, it has a consistent border radius, it has a consistent color, it has a consistent look and feel. If you play an outline icon or a field icon, pick a struggle, pick one essentially. So the goal is if you don't design icons, have an icon pack for consistency. Next now is our grid systems. So different devices, desktop, tablets, mobile phones, they basically have different grids that can use to represent our elements. So the goal of the grids now basically is to have. I will show you quickly. Let me just quickly pull up a frame. Okay, iPhone 13. Okay, let's add a grid to this. You see this netted red lines now. This is a grid. Now, usually we apply column grid. So let's use column now. Okay. So it helps in our alignment. So most persons use rulers. Rulers are cool, but for developers' sake, it's not advised to use rulers because they're working with a particular frame. So there is a in code. I don't code, so I know you understand what you're going through. So that's why it's advised that instead of using rulers, use grids instead. So you don't have a few inches off, or a few pixels off for developers. It's basically stress our devs. So to avoid that stress, it's advised that you use um, it's advised that you use grids. So if there are questions, please before I continue, just let me have a few questions. Questions, please. Questions, please. Are there any questions? Okay, are we following?
Yes, we are.
So we are clear? No questions at all?
The only question I want to ask is if you change a component, like a secondary component, not the primary one, is it still linked to the parent component, or once you make a change on a secondary component, it disengages itself from the primary component?
Okay, so the change, it's from top to bottom. It's from parent components to the daughter components. So if you make a change to parent components, it affects all other components. But if you make a change to the daughter components, it doesn't affect anything. So once you birth them now, they are now standalone elements. Like, let me show you what I did the first time. What did I do? Okay, let me share this tab instead. Let me share for the StudiHUB community, um, so I can demonstrate how changing a daughter component doesn't affect anything else. Okay, so it's too much sharing. Okay. If you can see my screen, let me know. You can see it.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Awesome. Okay, so this is our parent component here. This one with the diamond looking shape. Now all else is our daughter component. So if I try to change the typography of our parent here, so let's say, hold on please. Okay, from Roboto, let's change it to, let's say, Lato, for example. Okay, then let's turn this one to italic. Is it italic here? Yes, italic. Okay, so you notice how everything else changed. Yes, so these guys down, they all changed to italic here. So let's pick this middle guy and change just the color. Let's say the color of this button now. So let's say gray 333. So this, it doesn't affect anything else. Okay. So working with components now, the in our style guide, in our design system, now that will have all our parent components. So when you change any particular elements or feature in our design system, it affects everything across board. But inside the main design, if you change the total components now, they don't really affect anything at all. They are now standalone components. So does that answer your question, Victor? Was this Jola that asked the question?
Yes, it does. But at this point where you make a change to this now, if you want to change it back to what you had before, that is it still linked to that parent component now, or is now on its own?
No, it's not. It's on its own. So once you birth a daughter components, they are basically on their own. The changing them doesn't affect the daughter and doesn't affect the different components or any other components. Yet, so you only it only affects anything else once it's altering the parent components. But affecting changing the daughter components doesn't really touch anything else. They are just alone and alone. You get.
Yes, I get. So if we make a change on
Okay
the
then.
parent component now, it won't affect this daughter again.
It will. It will. Okay, let's try it. Let's try it. Let's try it. Let's change the color to um, let's say let's say okay. Okay. Doesn't really affect you. That's true.
Okay, that was what I was trying to do. Now
So
the way
this
we are
is
changing
basically
is more
unlinked.
like on its
Okay, okay.
own. Yeah,
It's on its own essentially, yeah. So if you alter this one, doesn't affect anything else. But if you alter this one, as long as you
it
have altered
affects.
this
So
one
this one
now,
is kind
this
of disengaged
standalone one,
like this. Yeah, okay.
exactly, is engaged. Any other question?
No, that's all for now.
Okay. Then. So let's quickly continue with the style guide. One second, please. So, we're explaining the grid systems. So, it's advised to use the column grid system. So, for alignment purposes, we align everything horizontally or vertically, but we use columns, so it's basically just vertically. So, the goal of this is to ease the stress on our developers and stuff like that. Now, next is spacing. So, we mentioned white spacing earlier, yes, but now we don't use white spacing haphazardly. We don't use white space haphazardly. So we just don't say okay, from header to body text should be 32 pixels. Then from this icon to this icon should be 64 at random. There should be a spacing convention. So before we start designing now, we'll just put at the back of our minds that we're working with, let's say, 10 pixels. So it's 10 pixels, 20 pixels, 30 pixels, or 8 pixels, 16 pixels, 24 pixels, and likes. So it's usually advised to stick with 8 pixels because of the code and everything else. Like there is this way of calculating it that developers do, but the favorable one for them now is the 8 pixels spacing convention. So we document it as well in our style guide. So next is our text fields or our placeholders. So the beautiful thing about this now is from our style guide, we develop components as we go along. Yeah, so this okay, maybe tomorrow we'll talk about assets. So assets now are like components that are stored. So you just drag and drop the components as our assets. Iconography, buttons, text input fields and the like. So just drag and drop them as our assets. So that's that. Same thing here as well. Selectors. So we can all create this one as our um, components, and forming it as components now basically makes it an asset. You see, I don't know if it is displayed here. Okay, this is not our local file, so you can't use this. So next is our buttons. Now there are different kinds of buttons now. The goal is to document everything and then make them as components essentially. So we have primary buttons, secondary buttons. We have different states. Either they are hover states, disabled states, active states, and the like. So we document every single part of them. So this is more complex stuff which we don't need now. Maybe as we go along in the program, we'll basically talk about that. But essentially, I'll send you guys a link to this particular Figma community. So you just study, take your time to study this, and if you can replicate one or two, like basically create your own style guide for an imaginary design. So this is the link. I'm going to upload the group chat as well. One second, please. So I will also send other resources through Desmond about the principles of design. Then tomorrow we'll talk about what's it called now? We touch a bit of UX, the principles, the laws of UX basically. Now that talks about things like proximity, well, things like there are like 20 of them essentially. So you don't need to know all of them, but as you go along the design, you get a sense of mastery. That's okay, this shouldn't be, this shouldn't be. Then afterwards, we will basically look at some dummy designs and try and spot errors. That will be upper week. But basically now we try to put our understanding of UX principles now in place. Things like white spacing. So there's this law now that you need to know that we try to minimize number of clicks. If a user now can click 2 times and you can reduce it to 1 click, do so. If you are supposed to click like 8 times and you can reduce it to 3 clicks, do so. Okay, so we try to highlight some flaws in designs that have already been, so we try and make them better. So that's basically it for today. Are there any questions from last week's class, this week's class, then maybe next class?
I want to please, can you go around that grid again? The red
I'm
lines
coming.
showing.
1 second. I'll do so now. Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So what about it?
I'm trying to replicate something like that. I don't know if you can go through it again so that I can create something like that.
Okay. So what I basically did. Let me remove it
Yes.
first. Let me go to this account. Frame. Create a frame now on iPhone 13
Okay.
Pro Max. Then you see this right panel now. You see layout grid. Click on plus. You see
Layout
this
grid.
netted
Okay.
grid. This 10 pixel netted.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Click on the plus. Now, what you do is click on this settings button here for layout grid. You see an option that will come out.
Okay.
You
Okay.
see, we go here now. Grid.
Yes.
So we use column grids for our designs. Column grids. So if you click on this,
Column
you see
grid.
this.
Okay.
So now,
Yes.
yeah, it depends on the frame you're working with. If you're working with an iPhone or an Android or a web interface, now that different layout grids that different layout grid setting that we follow. So the counts now basically includes the number of red lines. So let's say for iPhone and others by designs, let's say 12 is okay. Don't know that's much.
Is
4
there a
is okay
standard
now. 4
grid
is
for all
okay.
those platforms?
Yeah, okay, that's you need to study material design like Google's design system. So they have like a
Okay.
guideline for most of their Android designs essentially.
Okay.
So usually it's advised to just use like nothing too big. Okay, 4 is okay. Now the margin now is the line between two red lines, two grids
Okay.
essentially. So you can use 12 as the spacing between them. Then the gutter now is the gutter. The margin is from end to end now, so don't confuse it. It's from end to end line is the margin. From
Okay.
left side, right side
To
is
right
the
side.
margin. Exactly. Then the gutter is the space in between. Let's use 24.
Okay.
So if you are designing now, you basically want to work within this particular grid. So if you have an element here, let's say this rectangle here, so it should fall between here.
From the edge of
So
that
it should be
place, yeah.
aligned
Okay.
essentially. Let's say we have another one here, exactly from the edges. So if you can help it, yes, try and 1 second, try and reduce so it doesn't really fall out of place. So it should fall within the grids essentially. So the goal is so that the developers will have an easier time developing design.
Okay.
Understand?
Yes.
So that's basically it. So if you're using a web interface now, then for web, there's a different setting for a web grid. But like I will send you the design systems that you can read. Material design system by Google or human interface design system by iPhone or by Apple rather. Or there's even one by Carbon and IBM. So either one works. Either one works. They're just guidelines to follow.
All right. Thank you.
It's all good. Any other question?
So you were saying something about icon and icon packs. Is there I know if you are not good in that, you said we should get the pack, but is there other ways also if you want to create them yourself? Do you have to take personal classes on that?
I didn't get that. What did you say?
I was talking about icons, how important they are in our designs, and you mentioned that if you don't create or
Are
you
you
don't
saying
learn,
icons now?
yes, icon packs, yes, icon,
Okay, if you can't design icons by yourself, now there are different
yes,
packs out there. Yeah, so
yes,
things like feather icons now, I will send you a list of icons and design systems. So for icons
okay,
now, feather icons are there, um, flat icons are there. That's really the two I use, feather icons, flat icons. So I'll send you the link and some
all
others.
right,
Then
all right,
material design, then human interface design, basically.
all right, thank you.
Yeah. Joy, Mabel, Victor. Okay, Victor, I said something. Crypto stuff. Any other question?
No.
So,
No
you have one?
question.
No question. So, we still have a pending assignment, which is your brief from your brainstorming session. So, if you decide on a good leader, I want you guys to send me or Desmond the brief of the product you're working on. Get demography, the idea, the basically all about it. Work on a SWOT analysis for the particular product. List like at least four other companies or designs that are similar to what you're trying to work on. So send it to me before class tomorrow, or basically we'll just review it before class starts. Is that okay?
Yes,
Okay, so if there are no other questions, then we'll just call it a night for tonight. So have a good night, guys. See ya.
Thank you.
All right, good night.